Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about the whistleblower report about Twitter that was filed by Peter Zatko, also known as Mudge, Cult of the Dead Cow, and Loft Heavy Industries, some of the most famous of all hacktivism groups, and he actually was the head of Twitter security. Let's go over some of what he's done in the past to kind of show what kind of person is Mudge. Let's go ahead and first look at the talk they gave testifying to the United States Senate about the vulnerabilities of the internet, even talking about how they could take down the entire internet in less than 30 minutes. The Mudge character here, who files this whistleblower report, former head of Twitter security, has a great reputation. I'm not going to play the entire video, but let's check out a short clip, and then we'll go over more of the details and why you should be concerned about this whistleblower report.
I'm one of the network system and cryptography wizards at the Loft. Basically, I'm the person who breaks into the systems and undermines the network security, and that's what I do in my day job. Companies like that. Some of my previous projects were Loftcrack, along with Weld Pond, in which we developed the tool for showing administrators and users the insecurities of Microsoft's passwords. I've released several security advisories on various pieces of commercial software, which have prompted vendor patches, which means they improved the software after we pointed it out to them. Unfortunately, many times they would not improve the software until we actually went public with the findings. Companies do indeed want to ignore problems as long as possible. It's cheaper for them. Recently I conducted training courses at NASA's Jet Propulsion Labs to try and raise their level of awareness as to the vulnerabilities, especially with the name brand recognition. In the very near future I'll be conducting training courses over at the NSA. Shortly after that, the Loft will be releasing a white paper on new cryptographic weaknesses that I, along with one of the top United States cryptographers, have found in a very prominent commercial operating system.
Let's take another look at a DEFCON speech he gave, which is a hacker conference. For those who are curious about technology, how it works, how you can hack it to change the way it works, or make it operate in a way that it wasn't originally designed.
Mudge, you know what's going on. We're all owned. And these were large companies that are oftentimes funded by taxpayer money. I'll just say that they're large government contracting organizations. And it's like, hey, why don't you start a program that actually pays us to go clean up the compromises, or at least figure out what happened and how bad the damage was? Isn't that your job?
He talks about how certain contractors lost drones in Iran and how there was almost an incentive, he hinted at, to get larger contracts when expensive advanced weaponry goes missing. That's basically the essence of what he is talking about when he's talking about game theory here. Pretty interesting to hear it from a guy who actually worked in DARPA. And of course, before that, he was in a more underground community. But he has an excellent reputation. And when he speaks, everyone should listen, especially with this whistleblower report when it comes to Twitter. Twitter being probably the most important website on the entire internet right now, our currently centralized internet. Of course, I'm always emphasizing decentralizing your life online, and I do suggest checking out other things. Check out my previous video on more open, decentralized social media options. I still use Twitter. I think it's an excellent resource. It's also a great way to get exposure for articles and videos that I work hard on. So, of course, I'm going to continue using Twitter, and I suggest everyone, use what works for you. But also expand yourself so you're not completely dependent on centralized platforms. And so let's go into some of what he was reporting on. And it's pretty serious stuff, including the fact that around 5,000 employees have access to all kinds of sensitive information and software, and that they also had an issue where there was reportedly an effort to hire Indian government agents on the payroll on the actual staff of Twitter it also would give them more access to sensitive user data. If you remember my video on modified elephant, There was actually incidents where activists, lawyers, and journalists actually were having evidence planted on their devices to incriminate them. All kinds of shady things happen across the world. This is not meant to make anyone look bad, but it's just a fact of life that not everyone operates within the bounds of the law. It's another reason I am always suggesting to utilize some of those free phone number services. If you do have to put a phone number on your account, if you're an activist, a journalist, or someone else with sensitive position and has to protect their ability to speak freely. And if you put your phone number in several different platforms, all of those accounts are linked together to the same identity. It's a really easy way for people to identify the owner of an account. Zatko, or Mudge, also alleges that he warned colleagues of the fact that company servers were running out-of-date vulnerable software and that there was a resistance to upgrading certain vulnerable softwares. And that opens it up to a range of possibilities if there were individuals that were motivated to leave holes open. And having around 5,000 staff members have access to sensitive software and data of users, it's very difficult to track what they are actually doing. In fact, according to Mudge's complaint, they didn't even have a system that in place that was actually telling them who was accessing what. Let's also take a look at other recent reports. Some of this includes ex-Twitter employee who was convicted of using his position at the company to spy on Saudi dissidents in this case and government critics. And so you can see how this kind of access can be abused. There was also incidents where there was a bug in Twitter that allowed people to find out the actual phone numbers that were connected to the accounts. There was at least one government that forced Twitter to put agents on the payroll, accessing user data at a time of intense protests in the country. I would be wary if there is an attempt to tie your identity to your account. And this goes for all major social media platforms, as well as the more decentralized. There is no good reason to tie people's identities to their accounts. You don't have any idea how this information could be used in the future. As it mentions here, take a tech platform that collects massive amounts of user data, combine it with what appears to be incredibly weak security infrastructure, and infuse it with foreign state actors with an agenda, and you have a recipe for disaster. Previously, we saw and I reported on the fact that there are different services and contractors that are able to utilize data, and they actually utilized a government facility to prove their point, that they were able to take some of this data and they were able to find out exactly who was posting what and exactly where they were at any given time. Even if the post was in the past, the fact was they have enough data and access to the fire hose data, which is a highly restricted in most cases, wherein they can actually find out exactly where individuals are when they post things. According to the audiovisual recordings of an A6 presentation reviewed by The Intercept, a firm claims it can track roughly 3 billion devices in real time. This is equivalent to a fifth of the world's population. And Signal Labs, as mentioned, a social media monitoring firm, leverages its access to Twitter and was granted the rarely granted Firehose data stream to sift through the hundreds of millions of tweets per day without any restriction to prove this point. They were able to determine exactly who sent certain tweets, where they were from, who they were with, where they've been previously, and where they went next. In closing, I want to emphasize that there is no good reason for Twitter or any other social media platform to force a phone number verification. Your cell phone number is one of your most sensitive identifying pieces of information, and it can be used to link you to various data sets across the internet on various platforms. It can tie every account that is linked to that phone number together, and It has been abused in the past by a company known as Mido AG, who actually was the official Twitter 2FA company. And it actually was used in this case to perform surveillance to help governments secretly surveil and track mobile phones. That's what I have today, guys. Just wanted to share that whistleblower report and a little bit about Mudge. So hope you like this video. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll be back later with more on how to protect your privacy.